call them, those Russian fascists, tried to conduct some nuclear terrorism acts. They caused a lot of damage to our Chernobyl biosphere reserve, which is extremely important as a natural preservation facility for us. As of today, our tentative assessment of the damage in that exclusion area is in excess of 2.5 billion Ukrainian hryvnias. They have damaged the system of monitoring, of radiation situation monitoring, so we have lost access to information about the radiation in the exclusion area. Now, part of those stations resume their operations, and we have now been working on enabling online sharing of this information with all Ukrainians. They have destroyed the latest generation Central Aeronautical Lab in the city of Chernobyl, which had about almost 100 modern devices, modern units, which have nothing similar in Europe. They have destroyed installed a lot of computer equipment. We have now been working on restoring and recovering it. There is that unique preservation area, Chernobyl preservation area, as I said, and almost 12,000 hectares have been destroyed by fire. There's huge losses for flora and fauna, and we understand that we have lost forever part of this ecosystem. The invaders, occupants, left a lot of explosives when leaving. They mined all the territory, and at the moment, people from the State Emergency Service, jointly with employees of the exclusion zone, have been working on demining of that territory for us to get access to that territory. Documenting of environmental crimes is going on every day by State Environment Inspection. The headquarters created under the State Environment Inspection, which has also parliament members, People's Deputies of Ukraine. I'd like to especially thank them for that. For the last 20 years, this has been the very first military conflict on the global scale with such wide-scale damage caused to the environment. Russian rockets and missiles have been hitting our oil depots, thermal power plants, chemical factories, and definitely it affects the environment. Their forest fires and valuable natural preservation areas are destroyed. Currently, we already have 245 cases of ecocide documented in Ukraine, including the Black Sea. 34 cases have been documented in Kyiv Oblast, which is the highest level today, 28 cases in Donetsk Oblast, 22 cases in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, and 22 cases in Luhansk Oblast. Those activities to document those environmental crimes continue. We receive a lot of assistance from Poland in those activities. Yesterday I had a meeting with the Minister of Climate and Environment of the Republic of Poland, Anna Moska. We had a very productive day. We have had a lot of meetings. We visited also those areas in Kyiv Oblast which were active combat areas, and we agreed. We agreed that we already had some equipment provided as assistance. 12 vehicles provided by our forest employees and for our people. We agreed that we will continue that cooperation. Anna Moskva separately promised us to provide us with a modern mobile lab, which will help us in documenting the damage, and it will show in real time online. It will show the Ukrainians the real situation with our environment. Also, we have agreed upon synchronizing interoperation between our central governmental authorities, State Water Agency, State Environmental Inspectorate, State State Soil Service, and we will use that invaluable experience that Poland's had. Definitely, I will say we definitely need changes and reforms to change those central governmental authorities, and I am sure that Polish colleagues will provide us with really useful assistance for us to recover our environment. Yesterday there was information about possible environmental catastrophe in the Sea of Azov. So what are actually dangers for us? What are the threats resulting from that bombing of Azovstal, and could we prevent that catastrophe from happening? I have to say that, first of all, that territory is not, say, quiet in terms of warfare, in terms of hostilities at the moment. To carry out any objective assessment of what happened there and potential damage which may be caused, we need safe access for relevant experts to that area. Now there have been a number of tasks set to investigate into those matters, and the State Emergency Service has been working very actively, as well as the State Environmental Inspectorate. And by now, speaking about any confirmations, any evidence of contamination of the Sea of Azov, we don't have such evidence. Still, we have already reviewed the emergency plans that that factory had. We have obtained information about that contaminant and how it could affect the environment. And I have to say that after reviewing that information, after establishing potential risks, we will provide separate statements, separate messages about that matter. At the moment, before we thoroughly reviewed, we have been thoroughly reviewing that matter involving all leading experts, including researchers, scientists, and I'm sure that very soon they will provide us with some objective assessment, evaluation, which will be shared so that nobody would share any fake information, so that we would only use official information based on facts. What are the prospects of applying to the International Court, the UN, based on those facts you documented? I have to say that currently, while documenting the damage, we have also been actively communicating with the European Commission. We maintain permanent communications with our European Commissioner, Evgeny Sienkiewicz. He is the European Commissioner for the Environment and Seas, and he has been helping us a lot. This help includes us getting part of that LIFE program, which has been providing funding for 30 years for environmental projects on the global scale. For us, to join the European Union and to file all those lawsuits, quality lawsuits to international courts, we'll get methodological support, also including support from our Polish colleagues. Currently, there are those 245 cases of ecocide, but we also have more than 1,500 of facts where our soil has been spoiled and our environmental system has been damaged. All those things are documented, and we verify that information. And again, with Minister Anna Mozgla, we agreed that we'll verify that those damages are calculated properly and documented properly. Now we have legal firms, law firms working with us, some top 5 law firms worldwide, and they also help us to properly organize those activities, to document those things for them to stand in international courts. Our goal is to get those damages recovered as much as possible, damages to the environment. I mean, I also have to say that in the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, it's structured in such a way that each and every ministry which has some unit reporting to it, like, for example, State Environmental Inspectorate, those relevant ministries develop methodologies in the respective areas, because we understand that we didn't have that such methodology before this war. Now we have already got 3 methodologies, and there has been a resolution by the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine establishing a list of such methodologies. We still have some time to work on them. We have been working 24/7, and whatever we have documented, we'll put through those methodologies. We will get it verified with our European partners who have proper expertise in those matters, and I'm sure that within the general case all those damages will be submitted to international courts. How do you control access to underground resources during the war? We have had a very long and deep meeting with the head of that subsoil agency. President of Ukraine, President Zelensky of Ukraine, has set a task that we should provide good, convenient access to subsoil resources while maintaining control over their use. We clearly understand that Ukraine will have to recover, and all that damage made today, all those infrastructural facilities that we unfortunately have been losing now, we will restore them, no doubt about that, and we'll need access to natural resources, which are basically to be used as raw materials for such recovery, for such restoration and rebuilding of Ukrainian economy. So now we have to provide convenient atmosphere for those investment cases to provide good access to subsoil resources, underground resources, and to maintain full control of all those subsoil resources being used. Because even when there are some facts of illegal use of such subsoil resources, such companies should at least get all those proper documents executed and should pay their taxes, because, you know, again, now taxes are an important source which we have to use to provide the state central budget of Ukraine with funds for our army to be productive, and to be able to fight against the invaders. Dear colleagues, you're welcome with your questions. Thank you. Could you please tell us whether there are any problems about radiation waste because of the destruction, and how to resolve those problems, if any? My second question is this: whether you have sufficient numbers of experts able to evaluate the damage caused to the environment. Is there any problem about the personnel, about training, about maybe licensing of such stuff? And my last question is about the recent fires in Vyshhorod district. Have they affected in any way the situation in the Chernobyl exclusion area and the radiation background level? Thank you. Let's start with your last question. Indeed, there have been wide mass-scale fires. It was difficult to extinguish them because a huge area has been mined, and we even have, unfortunately, we even have some information about some special fire extinguishing equipment being lost because of mines being placed also in those places where nobody would expect mines there. Those fires affected the atmosphere, the air, first of all, and indeed there has been some uncontrolled contamination, we understand, but it has not affected the radiation background in any significant way. I have to say that every day at 8 a.m. I receive information about the radiation situation at all those stations we have in Ukraine, including Chernobyl exclusion area. And, you know, no one day of this war we saw no excess of those levels, except for those days where the invaders were moving across that exclusion area with their equipment and causing radioactive dust into the air. So now since the situation is stable. Also, I'd like to remind you that the Ministry of Environment Protection presented on the last week a new application which is called Eco-Zagroza, Eco-Threat. Now it's available in both the App Store and Google Play Market. Any Ukrainian is welcome to download that application. There was information about the atmospheric air, about the information coming from radiation monitoring stations. It's available to anybody. Also, you can use this application to document, to report any environmental crime by an invader, not only by invaders, but anybody. And you can send that information with a photo, with geopositioning data to the ministry. So everybody is welcome to use that application. I'd like to reassure you that we have a separate unit which provides support for that application, and every report is processed, and if there are any reports about any invaders' equipment being seen or any military action, that information is passed to the relevant ministry to be processed. But those issues about the environment are sent to the State Environmental Inspectorate or to local self-government bodies. And there was the first question about that waste, the radiation waste. Well, now we have been assessing, and I mentioned the tentative assessment in excess of 2.5 billion Ukrainian hryvnias across the exclusion area. So now we have been assessing the damage, and after we get the whole picture, we understand of what happened there, we'll understand what to do about it and whether we have that problem there. At the moment, I don't have any information about any systemic problem with that radioactive waste. So I think that currently there is no such problem. With regard to experts, to stuff, I'd like to emphasize it again that a lot of experts, lawyers, environment specialists, psychologists, and even just lay people who care, they come to the ministry and they start working. Now we enable everybody to do something. For example, I'd like to remind you that there has been the Ukraine's Recovery Council under the President of Ukraine, and there is a separate team which is called Environmental Safety. It's led by the Ministry of Environment Protection, the chairman of the Specialized Parliamentary Committee for the Environment, and deputy head of Presidential Office. And within that group, we have already had more than 100 experts who expressed their willingness to work in that team. And the task of that team, of that group, subgroup under that, within that council is to develop within 2 months some steps which would enable us to build a new modern European Ukraine. And that subgroup or group for environmental safety has been working on moving towards Euro integration, implementing respective directives, recovering restoring, rebuilding our cities using new technologies, not restoring industry based on old, outdated standards. So there are many experts, but doors are open for everybody, and anybody who will come, even with any one idea, will be able to join our joint activities. Thank you. Any more questions? You're welcome. You mentioned the part of the ecosystem that we have lost forever. I'm interested, why forever? Are there any cases of such parts? I will provide several examples for you. For forest to grow, or for the tree to grow, we would need, say, 70 years. Speaking about those ancient forests, or some nature preservation sites where we have forests, for whatever money, we will not be able to restore those trees in 1 or 2 years. We will need many years, but there are some water sites and swamps which are destroyed, and the occupiers' vehicles, equipment is moving through them. Those are ecosystems which were developing for hundreds of years, for centuries, and unfortunately, indeed, we have been losing them. Either they are damaged or we just lose them completely. Also, everybody understands that there are locations where animals would live, also including those animals which are in the Red Book, and they migrate. And whether they come back, those animals, it will depend on our armed forces, and also it will depend on how that ecosystem recovers and whether they will be able to comfortably reside there after our victory. Any more questions? Thank you. Thank you for your information. Please tell us also about Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Currently, it's fully under control. How do you control the environmental situation there? And my second question is, Russia made missile strikes, rocket strikes against chemical factories, for example, in Sumy. How does it affect the local environmental situation, and how to... Thank you for your question. Regarding the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, since it's under control of Energodar company and the Ministry of Energy of Ukraine, you will probably get better answers about that from Ministry of Energy. I can just tell you that now we are receiving data about the situation and how it affects the environment in terms of radiation, and we don't have any information about any excess levels or any dangerous, any messages about that. So the situation is, let's say, stable. About chemical factories, before this war, Ukraine was a country having high-tech production facilities, including in chemical industry. Those facts documented where shells, projectiles would hit chemical factories, all those facts have been documented. As soon as there was a chance for experts of State Environmental Inspectorate, they would visit those sites and document the damage and try and forecast possible consequences. You mentioned an example of a factory in Sumy. As far as I understand, you mean Sumy Chemprom. Indeed, it was hit by Russians' artillery, but situation was quickly localized. It did not affect people because there is certain distance between that factory and residential areas. And currently, there is no danger or no impact on the environment of any long-term nature. We don't see it there. Any more questions? Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to remind you that we had Ruslan Strilets in our studio, and please stay with us. And at 2:30 p.m. we'll discuss the situation at the front line with our next speaker. Glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes.